Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why doctors sometimes prescribe antibiotics even when they're not sure they're needed? What is going on behind those decisions? This new research dives into that exact puzzle. Antibiotic resistance is a seriously scary global health problem, and overuse of these medicines is a big reason why doctors are the gatekeepers, deciding when to prescribe them. But sometimes, even when they know the risks, they still do it. This suggests it is not just about not knowing the risks. Researchers think something else might be at play, willful ignorance. Think about it. Willful ignorance means deliberately choosing not to know something that might make you feel bad or force you to change your behavior. In this case, it could mean a doctor avoiding information about the long-term consequences of prescribing antibiotics, especially when faced with a tough decision. This allows them to prioritize what feels good right now, maybe satisfying a patient or avoiding a difficult conversation over the bigger picture of antibiotic resistance. This is a big deal because it has never really been studied in doctors prescribing antibiotics. So the researchers decided to put this to the test. They conducted two cool experiments using a special kind of game. Basically, they created a scenario where imaginary doctors had to decide whether to prescribe antibiotics immediately or hold off. Maybe do more tests. The tricky part is how they played with information. They had a full information group where the doctor knew all the ins and outs of the situation and the potential outcomes. Then they had a hidden information group. In the full information condition, the doctors always saw a situation where prescribing antibiotics right away was better for the doctor's immediate payoff, but not great for the overall good. In the hidden information condition, the doctors only knew what they would gain from their choice. They had a choice to either dig deeper and find out the consequences for the patient and for everyone else, or just go with their gut and make a decision without knowing. This is where willful ignorance comes in. Does giving them the option to not know lead them to make different choices? In experiment 1, they found something really interesting. This is a big difference. When the doctors had all the information up front, the full information condition, only about a quarter of them prescribed antibiotics right away. But when they were in the hidden information situation and chose not to find out the consequences for the patient, a whopping 57% prescribed immediately. That is more than double. This strongly suggests that when doctors can, they might choose to be ignorant about the negative consequences of their choices, leading to more immediate antibiotic prescribing. They basically found evidence for their willful ignorance hypothesis. Interestingly, when doctors in the hidden information group did choose to find out more, they decided to reduce the uncertainty. About 42% prescribed immediately. So, they were still more likely to prescribe immediately than if they'd had all the info from the start, but less likely than if they'd chosen to remain ignorant. This hints that actively seeking information, even if it doesn't reveal perfect certainty, still leads to better decisions than actively avoiding it. The first experiment showed that this willful ignorance is a real thing that can influence antibiotic prescribing. But the researchers noticed a limitation. They realized their first experiment simplified the societal impact of antibiotic resistance, kind of bundling it in with the patient's consequences. They wanted to make the impact on society much clearer. So they did a second experiment. In experiment 2, they kept the same basic game but made the collective cost of antibiotic resistance super obvious to everyone, in all conditions. So every time an antibiotic was prescribed in the game, it cost everyone a small amount of money, representing the growing problem of antibiotic resistance. And what happened? Even though the difference was smaller this time, the pattern still held, but with much better prescribing overall. In the full information group, only 12% prescribed immediately. In the hidden information group where they chose not to know, it was 24%. This is fascinating. By really hammering home the societal cost of antibiotic resistance, they saw a big drop in immediate prescribing across the board. Even in the hidden information condition, where they could have chosen to be ignorant, the number of immediate prescriptions was much lower than in experiment 1. This is the key takeaway from experiment 2, making the collective impact of antibiotic resistance. The public health threat really clear to the doctors reduced the effect of willful ignorance. It seems that when the broader consequences are front and center, doctors are less likely to turn a blind eye. So piecing it all together, this research shows that willful ignorance, the tendency to avoid information that might make us feel uncomfortable or require us to act differently, plays a role in why antibiotics are overprescribed. When doctors faced uncertainty and could choose not to know the risks to the bigger picture, they were more likely to prescribe immediately. However, when the societal costs were made very clear as in experiment 2, this effect diminished significantly. This suggests that simply making the collective consequences of antibiotic use more salient, communicating the threat of antibiotic resistance more effectively, could be a powerful tool to encourage more appropriate prescribing. What does this mean in the real world? It means we need to create systems that make it harder for doctors to be willfully ignorant. This could involve better diagnostic tools, clearer reporting on antibiotic use, and perhaps even requiring doctors to justify why they are not doing further testing. More importantly, it highlights the power of reminding everyone, doctors, patients, and the public about the serious consequences of antibiotic resistance for all of us. The study is strong because it used a real-world simulation and a relevant sample of healthcare professionals. However, like all research, it has limitations. The scenarios were still simplified versions of reality, and real-life diagnostic uncertainty is often much more nuanced. Also, they didn't ask doctors why they made their choices in the first experiment, though they did in the second, which is a good step towards understanding the thought process. Future research could explore how to implement these findings in actual clinical settings. What are the best ways to communicate these collective costs? What happens if there are actual costs associated with getting more information? These are big questions to explore. Ultimately, this research gives us a crucial insight into the human psychology behind antibiotic overprescription. It's not just about a lack of knowledge, but about how we deal with uncertainty and potential negative outcomes. By making information more transparent and highlighting the shared responsibility we all have in combating antibiotic resistance, we can hopefully steer healthcare professionals towards more appropriate and life-saving decisions. What do you think about these findings? Does the idea of willful ignorance resonate with you in other areas of life? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating dives into the science of our minds.